Alright, hello everybody. Welcome back to my hands again. This time maybe I'll have my focus be a little bit better because I'm on a white surface instead of on my dining room bar that was over there in the last video. I have not rehearsed this video at all, and I'm actually feel pretty dumb for taking this on because I think this is going to be a big project, but considering I've done 2 declutter videos in a row, I thought it might be a good idea to actually show the internet what palettes I do own. So I'm going to do an eyeshadow palette collection video. I'm going to try not to make this an hour long, even though it probably will be. But, oh god, I'm already like dreading doing this because it's going to be a fucking nightmare. But whatever, we're going to do it. We're going to see how well it goes. And these are in no particular order. I might smash some together. Like I have some e.l.f. palettes and stuff that are similar, and I might put them together just to kind of speed things up a little bit. I also have a few Z palettes that have single shadows in them, and I'll show those as well. But yeah, I don't want to waste any more time, so let's just get to it and do the video. Okay, so let's start with the palette that started it all. This is my Urban Decay Electric palette. This is the I think second eyeshadow palette I ever bought, and this is probably my favorite palette that I own. I absolutely adore this palette. Oh hey, there's my camera. You can't get this palette anymore. It's been discontinued for a really long time. I actually bought it when it was on sale at Sephora for like, oh gosh, for like half price or something. I think I got it for like $25. I love this palette so much. I love this green color story over here. I love this purple is one of my favorite purples in my collection. The hot pink is nice. The green is okay. This blue is okay. This blue is pretty good. The only color I really don't like at all is this silver. It's just kind of out of place to me, and I don't really use it ever. But as you can see by the dusting around the greens, I've used those quite a bit. And I really like this palette a lot. This purple is also just so beautiful. I love this purple. I have no idea how much swatching I'm going to do in this video, but considering this palette is so old and that's what the purple looks like, god damn it, this palette is so good. This like introduced me to colorful eyeshadow, and I just fucking love this palette so much. It's probably my favorite one in my collection, and I'm super happy to have it, and I will never ever get rid of it. Alright, next up is the kind of big sister to the electric palette. This is the Urban Decay Wired palette that came out, I think, in 2020. This was kind of like the answer to, you know, people... I feel like people had been asking for kind of like a follow-up to the electric palette, because it's kind of a cult classic, and this was Urban Decay's sort of compromise on it. The interesting thing about this palette is that you have these shades that are for face and body, and these are for eyes, because these are not technically eye safe. But you can bet your ass the day I bought this, I immediately went in with Gravity and Savage, these like purple and pink colors. And I think that Gravity is a pretty fine purple as well. There are some crossover colors between this and the electric palette, but I mean, that's a pretty damn good purple as well. I don't think it's as good as the electric one, but I still like it. This palette is fine. I'm not in love with these kind of pastel shades that are in here. Fluorescent and Shock are just okay. I also do not like that they put this shade Glitch in here. It's kind of like a white topper type shade, but it just doesn't make any sense to me. I don't really like this in here at all. They could have done something so much more interesting, like a true neon yellow, or like a duochrome or something, but instead it's just like this weird white topper shade. And I mean, this palette's fine, but if I had to choose between this and electric, I would go with electric every day of the week. Okay, next up I want to go with these 2 Rimmel Magnifies palettes. They have a lot of these palettes, and these are the only 2 that I own. I have the Electric Violet edition and the Jewel Rocks edition. I got the Violet one first because it reminded me a lot of the Urban Decay Naked Ultraviolet palette, but I think this one actually came out first, so this wasn't a dupe for the Naked Ultraviolet palette, but I think this is a pretty damn good palette. These things are cheap. They're like $10 or something at like Target and Walgreens and CVS. This turquoise shade is pretty good. Let me swatch this bad boy over here. I really like that turquoise shade. My lights are so freaking bright that they're washing everything out. But that turquoise shade is dynamite, and I think it's a really fun addition to this palette, as well as, you know, you've got like a matte purple over here. These are all kind of shimmery shades. It's also got this really interesting deep kind of jewel blue over here that I really like. But this palette's pretty good. I like it. It's cheap. So even if it doesn't completely knock it out of the park, it's not that expensive, and I think it's pretty good. And for the Jewel Rocks one, I don't really have a lot of jewel-toned palettes, so this was kind of like just a spur-of-the-moment purchase for me. It actually reminds me a lot of the new Urban Decay Wild West palette. Like, if you look at them side by side, they're not that far apart from each other, and I actually think this one might be a little bit more interesting. I've only used this one time, and, you know, I think it's fine. I haven't really felt inspired to go back and use it again, but I do think that it's a pretty decent palette. I mean, I like these blues. I like that there's a lot of kind of grungy stuff in here. Like, you've got this kind of grungy olive, you've got these kind of bluish gunmetal colors, you've got this nice deep, you know, green, kind of a forest green, you've got these grungy mustardy colors. I think this is a pretty decent palette. It's kind of hard to find. I found it on a whim at some random Walgreens in the city, but when I go to like Target and Walmart, I don't usually see it there. But I think this is a pretty decent palette for the price. I've only used it, like I said, once. I think I did 2 eye looks with it. If I can remember, I'll try to include some pictures of the looks I did. But I think, you know, it's fine. It's good. It's not amazing. It doesn't knock it out of the park, but it's also not terrible. And for the price, I mean, I don't think I can complain about it. Next up, I'm going to do my 2 ABH palettes. This is the first one I bought, which is Riviera. I remember I was so pissed off because whenever ABH announced this, I was like, oh my god, ABH is finally doing a colorful palette. And I was very into colorful eyeshadow, and I bought it like the week it came out, and I used an Ulta gift card to pay for like half of it, because I never buy like luxury or, you know, high-end makeup. So this was a very new kind of thing for me. I usually buy drugstore stuff. And then like 2 weeks later, or a month later, or whatever, they announced the Alyssa Edwards palette. And I was like, okay, this is the colorful palette that I've been waiting for. But the funny thing about this palette is that it came out like, gosh, like 2 years ago or something. And I just bought this at Marshall's or at TJ Maxx in the city like 3 months ago. And I got it for 50% off. So I think it was like $25 or something. And I've only used it a few times, but I think it's okay. Like, it's not, it doesn't blow my socks off. But it's fine. I feel like the mattes are pretty dry in it. I don't have a lot of experience with the ABH, seeing as these are my only 2 palettes. But I think, you know, they kind of go well together. They're both, you know, kind of semi-colorful palettes. Obviously, the Alyssa Edwards one is way more colorful, but there's a lot of crossover between them. Like, you have the neutrals down here, and you've got kind of similar neutrals over here. You've both got a purple. There's like a hot pink in both of them. The more interesting thing about this one, the Riviera palette, is that all of these like shimmers up here are really, really interesting. Like Mediterranean is an absolutely gorgeous, deep blue, kind of silvery shimmer, almost a gunmetal, just like Seaside. And Inheritance is one of the best golds that I have in my collection, which I have a better gold, but this is still like a pretty damn good one. If you want like a big yellow gold metallic shadow, it's pretty good. But, you know, there's a lot of crossover. I'm glad that I got the Alyssa Edwards one for like $25 at Marshall's. I would not have paid full price for this, especially after buying this one and getting freaking duped, because I thought, ooh, this is the colorful palette. And then ABH was like, no, just kidding, this is the actual colorful palette. And then the following year, they released like 42 colorful palettes in a row, like all during holiday season. But I think these are fine. You know, they're nice to have in my arsenal. I probably, if I had to like declutter some stuff, they might be pretty high on the chopping block to declutter, just because I don't use them much, but I think they're fine, and that's that on that. Alright, let's talk about my e.l.f. bite-size palettes. I have the, what is this one called? The Mint to Be one, which is from the new Mint collection. I have Acai You, which is the purple one. I have the Hot Jalapeno one, which is like the grungy green one. I have, this is Berry Bad and Rosewater. I think these palettes are pretty good for the price. My favorite is Hot Jalapeno. I did one of my favorite looks I've ever done with this palette, which is like a grungy green look. I'll try to throw a picture in here if I can. I just think that this color story, it's like all killer, no filler. It's really good. All these colors work together beautifully. This deep green is really beautiful. I love this kind of like, obviously like a jalapeno green color. I think this one is amazing. These two palettes, the Berry Bad and the Rose Water, they're kind of more neutral. I'm not super into them, but I thought they would be fun to try, and plus they were like $3, so I just bought a bunch of them in one order. However, something I want to note is that this shade in the, is this the Rose Water one? Yeah. This is kind of like a dusty, kind of maroon with some gold in it, and this is actually a really unique and kind of beautiful shade to my collection. I find that I don't really, come on, focus, baby. I find that I don't really have a lot that looks like this, and I think it's really pretty, especially for just like a one shadow kind of smoky eye look. So that was kind of an unexpected win in that palette. The SIU I was excited about because I love purple, but this palette was just okay. And as you can see, there's like some hard pan in there where it's got those little like nubbies. It looks very strange. This palette is okay. The Meant to Be one is fine. For some reason, this one is $1 more than the other ones. I also find that in this palette, this kind of like deep gray-green is a very unique shade to my collection. I don't really have anything like this either. Let me swatch this bad boy. Yeah, it's just like a really, oh, my lights are washing it out so bad. It's just a really interesting kind of dusty green-gray color. It looks deeper in real life than it does on camera because my lights are very bright. But this palette's fine. I'm not mad that I spent $4 on it. I got a couple good looks out of it, and that's it. I think these are fine palettes, especially for the price. Okay, well, we're on the topic of palettes that look like that. Let's move to a couple of the newest palettes in my collection. These are the new Wet n Wild Color Icon ones. This one's in Lights Off. This is the bigger one. And this one's in, what is this one called? My Lucky Charm. I really like these palettes. These three shades are delicious in this palette. This like grungy olive green. This is kind of a duochrome, kind of turquoisey color that I find to be pretty unique to my collection. I need to turn down my ISO. Hold on. There, that might be better. It's pretty unique to my collection. I think that's pretty good. I also like this Lights Off palette because it's just like grungy as hell. Like, I love these kind of gun, this is like a black, and then these two gunmetal shades are amazing. This is kind of a deep green. Yeah, these shades are just really, really pretty. I think that Wet n Wild did a phenomenal job with these palettes, and I'm super impressed. Alright, we're just going to jump around all over the place. Let's talk about Believe Beauty next. This is Dollar General's brand. They have a ton of makeup. This is a $5 palette. This is called Into the Blue. This palette is actually pretty fucking rad. This duochrome color in the middle is kind of like this brownish to blue. Oh, it looks really chalky right there. But it's kind of this like blue to like coppery shift. Really surprising to see a color of that quality in a $5 palette. This deep blue is also great. This whole palette actually kind of knocks out of the park. I can't believe this was $5. So if you can get your hands on this, they have a bunch of different colorways of these palettes. But I really like this blue, and if you're looking for something that's, you know, a little different than like a black smoky eye, you want to do a dark, maybe blue smoky eye or something like that, or if you want to use these as kind of like fun topper shades or like metallics to use on top of other palettes, I think this palette is pretty fucking great. Alright, let's talk about my single shadows really quickly. I have 3 Z palettes that I use with single shadows, and most of them are ColourPop. And in this palette, oh gosh, if I can get it open, let's see, what is this? This is Main Squeeze on the left and Strawberry Shake on the right, and this is some random Urban Decay highlighter that I got in an Ipsy bag a long time ago that I just kind of threw in here because I had the space. I like these palettes. I haven't used them very much, but if you're looking for just kind of like an orangey red or reddish pink palette, I think these are okay. I really like this. Oh my god, I'm running out of fingers to swatch with. This middle shade in the Main Squeeze palette is this beautiful kind of gold red reflect. Come on, focus. I find that that shade is really freaking beautiful, and I also really like this brighter red and this really deep, like kind of brownish red. I think those are really pretty. Next up, this is my grungy darks and blues palette. This is the Smoke Show / Blow and Smoke palette right in here. This is the Blue Moon palette in the middle, and this is the Baroque palette on the side. And these are two singles from ColourPop, and this is Urban Decay Lounge in the middle. I just kind of had it left over, so I put it in here. I really like Blue Moon. I think it's an exceptional blue palette. I really like Blow and Smoke. It's an exceptional kind of black and gunmetal palette. The Baroque palette is a little too similar to Blow and Smoke for me. I think it has some really pretty, these kind of like duochrome shades right here in the middle. And if you're looking for just kind of like mid-tone gray mattes, it's not bad. The only thing I hate about this palette is it has these 3 shades that are just mattes shot with glitter, and I freaking hate these shades. I hate them, because if you want a matte, get a matte. If you want a glitter, get a glitter. I hate when I want to use a color like this and then I try to blend it out and all the shadow just like flies, the glitter flies all over my face. I hate these 3 shades, but everything else, the rest of the 6, yeah, they get a thumbs up for me. And last but not least, this is my big, beautiful pink and purple palette. It's My Pleasure is over here on the left. The middle is, I think, Lilac You A Lot, and then Ooh La La is on the right. It's kind of like a pink gold palette. These are 3 ColourPop singles that I bought, and these are 2 ColourPop singles that I bought. I just had the extra space, so I put them in here. I really like the It's My Pleasure palette, this purple one over here. I think it's freaking gorgeous. And this purple, again, kind of like the Urban Decay purple, is just to die for. Like, if you're looking for a solid purple metallic eyeshadow, get the It's My Pleasure palette, and boom, you're set for life. But also these metallic shades are really, really pretty. I like this dark kind of maroon magenta color. I think it's super pretty. Lilac You A Lot and Ooh La La I haven't really used as much, but I think they're pretty decent. I feel like they kind of go in order of what I like in the palette. This one's my favorite, then Lilac You A Lot's in the middle, and then Ooh La La is kind of like my least favorite one of the 3, but I still think they're all good, and, you know, I don't mind them. I love that you can depot them so easily in ColourPop palettes as well. It just makes me really happy, but I think these are pretty good palettes. Alright, next up, let's quickly talk about the Revolution what the fuck is this even called? Forever Flawless Constellation palette. Most ridiculous name. I've torn this palette up because I've used it to make custom eyeshadows. This is like a $15 Makeup Revolution palette. I think it's fine. It's not amazing. It's not terrible. If you're looking for a pretty decent multicolor palette that's cheap, then run on down to Ulta or Target, because I think Makeup Revolution is at Target now. Pick this bad boy up. Venus, Neptune, Cosmic, and Dimension are all really pretty. Dimension is kind of a nice, like, duochrome thing. The only thing I don't like about, well, not the only thing, but one of the things I don't like about this palette is you can tell from Dimension, there's, like, some pretty intense hard pan that's being hit in there. And also, I will never for the life of me understand why Mercury and Cluster are both in this palette, because they're both nearly identical gunmetal shades. I do not understand why Makeup Revolution put both of those in here. Like, they could have put something way more interesting in there, but instead we get 2 of almost the identical colors. But this palette, it's fine. I'm not mad that I bought it, and it does its job, but I haven't used it in like 2 years, so there's that. Next up, let's talk about perhaps the most made fun of palette on the internet. This is Lady Gaga's House Labs palette. Despite what other people think, I freaking love that it's like this pyramid. I think that's so cool, even though I understand why people wouldn't like it. It does kind of make it a bitch to store, but I store all my palettes like this, kind of like books standing up. So this doesn't really bother me. I bought this palette on Black Friday because it was on sale really, really cheap. I was not going to pay full price for this, that's for damn sure. This is their House Labs Glam Room #1 Fame palette, which is interesting because I thought they were going to do the format of this palette for all of their palettes, but then the Stupid Love palette looked completely different, and it was this giant cardboard palette that also got, I don't know, joked on the internet. I feel so bad for Lady Gaga because her brand is kind of a dud, but here I am buying their shit anyway, so what does that say about me? I like this palette because it's a good, just neutral palette. like, I can understand why when this launched, people were, you know, understandably confused, because when you think of Lady Gaga, you don't think of brown eyeshadow. You know, this is just neutral, but I feel like Sarah Tano, who is Lady Gaga's makeup artist, just kind of makes makeup that she can use on Lady Gaga and doesn't really care if it works for the public, if that makes sense. I feel like she is the true kind of creative genius of the brand, and Lady Gaga is just kind of the face of it. But I think Sarah Tano is an absolutely exceptional makeup artist, because, like, Lady Gaga wore this for the presidential inauguration of Joe Biden, and she looked freaking beautiful, and she's worn this for other things. Like, all the photo shoots and stuff are absolutely gorgeous. But I really like sort of like this horseshoe of shades. This maroon one is really pretty. I like this deep burgundy, even though it's a little more glittery than I wish it were when it goes on the eyes. This kind of like lilac-y magenta is nice. There's also a black, because of course there's a black. And then this deep brown shade isn't bad. I've only used this palette a few times, but, you know, it hasn't been bad. It's just okay. I don't think it's worth the price. I do think it's a little boring, but I understand why they made this palette, because they were trying to, you know, get their core audience of, like, basic-ass white girls to, I don't know, buy this, even though that's not Lady Gaga's brand at all. What they should have done was release some, like, bitchin'-ass neon eyeshadow palette, or, like, really grungy, like, reddish-black eyeshadow palette, sort of from, like, the Born This Way era, and then release something. Like, if Lady Gaga were smart, I mean, I think she's a genius, but this is called the Fame palette. What she should have done was release one palette for every album that she's had. She should have had the Fame palette, she should have had the Fame Monster palette, she should have had the Born This Way palette, you know, the Art Pop palette, and every palette should have reflected sort of the vision for the album, because all of her albums, she has a different sort of persona for them. And when I look at this, I don't even think of the Fame persona, but, you know, it is what it is. But instead, she did this, and she did the Stupid Love palette, and the Stupid Love palette was kind of a palette for Chromatica, but she should have just called it the Chromatica palette. I don't understand. Like, sometimes I think Lady Gaga is, like, the smartest person on the planet, and then sometimes I look at what she does and I'm like, girl, what are you doing? And the makeup line is definitely a girl, what are you doing moment for me. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. This was sent to me by a friend. This is a 3 Shadow Custom Bobbi Brown palette. These are the shades. Black Chocolate, Burnt Sugar, and Gold Dust. I think these are great shades. This palette was like $8 million. I think this was like over $100 for these 3, so I'm really glad somebody sent it to me. This is just like basic colors though, but if you want like a champagne-y, dark brown, smoky eye, this is your best friend. This Wet n Wild palette, the Comfort Zone palette, was sent to me. This is one of their old format eyeshadow palettes before they reformulated. Pretty much the only reason I keep this palette around is for this shade, which is a dupe for the Urban Decay Lounge, which is stupid that I keep this shade, because I have Urban Decay Lounge, and there's a shade in the ColourPop Baroque palette that's similar to this, but this is a beautiful kind of like green, you probably can't even really see it, but it's like a green to red reflect. Oh god, I love this shade. But that's pretty much the only reason I keep this palette, even though I already have Lounge by Urban Decay. I'm so dumb. I don't know what's wrong with me. This is another palette someone sent me. This is Tartlet Toasted. This is like, if I ever want to do a neutral brown look, then this is it. The only real unique shade to me in this palette is Flame, which is this like coppery shade. But other than that, this is just like, I don't know, it's kind of boring, but this is a palette that I understand why it exists. It has a definite market. Like, if I were like a busy mom who was working like a cool office job and wanted to like be a bad bitch, like this is the palette that I would get up and put on every day, just as like a boom, 1, 2, 3, done eyeshadow look, because I don't have time to do my makeup every day. But me, I'm a single gay man living in New Orleans, and I have all the time in the world to play with ridiculous makeup, so this is not really my aesthetic, but I understand the core audience for this. Alright, let's talk about the most overrated palette in my collection. This is the Pat McGrath, La Vie en Rose, whatever the fuck, Mothership Subversive, La Vie en Rose, blah blah blah, could the title be any longer, palette. I bought this on a Sephora sale for like, I don't know, like $30 or something. This is an hello, there's my camera. This is a little 6-pan palette This palette is overrated. Or maybe I just think Pat McGrath is overrated, or maybe I'm just too broke to buy her real shadows, and I am a big baby. The only colors I like in this palette are this purple is pretty good. See, I talk shit, and then I swatch it, and look at that freaking purple. Good God. What am I even talking about? Don't unsubscribe. Don't even listen to me. Just go away. This magenta is pretty good, too. But the thing about these shadows is that I feel like when you swatch them, they look absolutely beautiful, but then when you put them on your eye, they're kind of difficult to work with. But their shadows are pretty good. And this gold, remember when I said earlier that I have a gold in my collection that's better than every other gold? Ooh, sorry, bumping my camera. Are you ready for this? Are you ready? Oh, God. That gold is so good. It makes me want to orgasm. It's so freaking beautiful. Oh, my God. So, yeah, I'm going to sit here and talk shit about Pat McGrath, but then I swatch these shadows, and they make me want to take a nap because they're so beautiful and I can't handle it. So, like, what the fuck am I even talking about? Alright, I took a little break to try to wash the swatches off my hands and to stand up for a second because my legs are falling asleep and I wanted to die. What should we talk about next? How about this Flesh? What's this called? I think it's called the Starshine palette. This is that weird brand that had those chubby little chode foundation sticks. I think they're owned by Revlon at Ulta. I don't even think they exist anymore. I don't think they're in Ulta. I bought this palette because it was on clearance for like 70% off. I think I got it for like $10 or something because I think it was overpriced beforehand. But when I saw this color story, I was like, fuck yeah, this is right up my alley. We've got these beautiful kind of like maroony, rusty colors. You've got these silvers. I mean, I love purple. There's a matte gray down here. I think there's a little bit too much overlap in this palette for it being only 9 pans. Like these two colors are pretty similar. These two colors are kind of similar. This one has a little hint of red in it, which is kind of nice. Overall, I think this palette's fine. I don't think it was worth the whole price tag, because I think it was like $38 or $40 or something full price, which I think is fucking bananas for a 9-pan palette. But because I got it for like $10 or $12 or something, I'm not mad at it. I've only used it a couple times, but it's nice to have in my collection, because I think this color story of this kind of like purple, silver, and like maroon and rust and gunmetal, it's a very interesting color story, and probably not one that I would have thought of on my own, but I'm happy to have this. It's a good one to have in my arsenal. Also, the cover of it is like, oh my God, just look at that. It's so freaking pretty. And I don't even think the glitter really rubs off, which is nice, because when I looked at this, I was like, oh my God, it's going to be a glitter bomb all over my apartment. But it's not, and it's so pretty. Look at that. Oh my God, it's so nice. Okay, next one. All right, let's talk about this bad boy. This has a stupid name too. What's it called? The Becca Pearl Glow Shimmering Eye Palette. This is the only, hey, you can see me. Oh, there's my camera. There's me. Hey, y'all. This palette I got at TJ Maxx for like $10 or something. I went back and forth on this palette for so long, because it was like 15, or it was like 20, and then it was 15, and it was 10, and I kept seeing it getting marked more and more down in like the TJ Maxx and Marshalls in my city, and I thought I said no to it like a million times, and I decided to just get it, because I'm the kind of person where, even though this whole color story didn't speak to me, the only shades in this that I was really interested in were honestly kind of like these, maybe like this L shape down here, because you have 2 mattes in the corner. You've got kind of like a grayish brown matte, a black matte, and then you've got these kind of pearly topper shades, and then these kind of metallics over here, which is just a really kind of strange format for a palette. But what I have discovered with this palette, and what makes me happy that I bought it, is that this shimmering kind of gunmetal black color is the absolute perfect, like, you want a grungy gray-black smoky eye, then this is the ticket. This whole palette was worth, I mean, like the $10 TJ Maxx price just for that shadow alone. I think that shadow is so pretty. I love that color. The rest of the palette I could kind of take or leave. These 3 shades are good. I like this kind of bluey topper shade. It's got kind of a blue, you can't see it because the lights are so bright, but it's got kind of like a blue gold pink like reflect in there, which is nice. If you want to go neutral, it's actually pretty easy to, like, in this little horseshoe, to just kind of keep it neutral. I think I've done, like, one neutral look with this before. But I think, oh god, this color is just so fucking good. Like, I mean, the palette, sure, like, I think it was like $40 full price or something, not worth it in the slightest. But if you see it at TJ Maxx and you want a good metallic gunmetal, then this one is really, really good. Alright, how about this bad boy? This is the Perfusion Neon palette. Perfusion is that, like, $5 palette brand that's at Walmart. And I bought this palette on a whim because it's really bright, and I love really bright eyeshadows. The fascinating thing about this palette is that I've actually discovered that instead of using it as an eyeshadow palette, I much prefer it as a blush draping palette. I've been testing blush draping here and there in a few looks, and I find that basically these four up here, and then this pink down here, which is called Like, if you just kind of like diffuse all of these like corals and soft pinks and maybe add a little bit of like to it, like on your cheekbones, and kind of like outside of your eye and blow it out, it is the most beautiful blush draping palette. And I love that the pans are so big because you can like get a blush brush in there and then really kind of diffuse it out. So this was a really pleasant surprise for me. I bought it as an eyeshadow palette, and then I ended up loving it for like really intense blush drape looks. So yeah, and it was like $5. Like, Perfusion is so cheap, so I'm kind of of the opinion of, like, even if you just spend a few dollars on a palette and it's not great, then it's not really, you know, even if it only has like a few standout shades and you didn't like waste a lot of money on it, it's better than spending like $55 on a palette and only liking half of it. So this is a pretty good palette. I love it for blush draping. For eyeshadow, it's so-so, but it was just a pleasant surprise in my collection. Okay. This is another one of my newest palettes in my collection, and I can thank Angelica Nyqvist for recommending this in one of her videos. This is the BH Trendy In Tokyo. I hadn't bought a BH palette in years before buying this one, and her video kind of made me, you know, kind of talked me into it a little bit. This is just a nice rainbow palette. Like, I don't know what else there is to say about it. It's got a great row of pinks. It's got a nice berry shade. These like kind of blues and purples over here are good. I don't think this palette's formula like knocks it out of the park, but I think if you're looking for kind of an entry-level, almost pastel rainbow palette, and if you like pinks and blues and purples, then this is pretty damn good. Like, it's, I don't really think there's a shade that I wouldn't use in this palette. I like that it's not weighted down with boring neutrals and browns like Trendsetter, which is like a orange sherbet color, is the most neutral color in this palette, and I like that they just committed to the whole thing, because a lot of colorful palettes, they're kind of a cop-out because they're like half colorful, half neutral, they don't really commit, and I like that this palette just commits to being full-on, almost pastel rainbow. I really appreciate that, and hey, I mean, if you're looking for a cheap palette, I think this is like $15 or $20, then this is not a bad one. I recommend it. Alright, let's talk about a palette that sucks. This is the Norvina Volume 3 Cherry Edition, Mini Pro Pigment Palette Volume 3. I don't like this palette. These two reds are pretty good. This orangey one is pretty good, but this is like a pressed glitter, and it's really flaky, and it sucks. This metallic is also kind of, just doesn't really have a lot of payoff. It's just kind of like a glittery sheen. This iridescent color up here is kind of the same thing, where it's just kind of like a, oh, come on, focus, where it's just kind of like, I mean, you can't even fucking see it. Like, it's just kind of like a weird, boring topper shade. This blue is weak as hell in the middle. It's not, it doesn't have a lot of color payoff. I just think this palette is overpriced, and it's not really, didn't really deliver on what I wanted. But if you're looking to do a red look, then hey, these two reds aren't bad, but everything else in here is just kind of mediocre for the price and for the format. Oh, the packaging's beautiful. But it just, yeah, pretty disappointed in this palette. Didn't really love it. Sorry, Norvina. Bye. Alright, let's switch gears to this little baby palette that I fucking love. This has a ridiculous name. It's the LA Girl Ilux Mesmerizing palette in the colorway Hypnotize. They have like 12 colorways of this, and I'm pretty sure that this one's actually not available anymore, which is a huge bummer. I bought it on a sale at Ulta for like $3 or $4. This burgundy in the middle, the biggest shade, Oh my god, I love this shade of burgundy. Oh, you can't really see it. God, it doesn't even look that impressive right here, but if I can find a picture, I did one of my favorite kind of vampy burgundy makeup looks I've ever done with this shade. It's got like a little bit of copper in it. Oh my god, I think that shade is beautiful. I did a 2 shadow look with just this burgundy and then this lighter shade on the inside corner, and I really kind of winged it up and blew it out. And man, it is one of my favorite looks I have ever done, and it's all this palette, and it was like $3 or $4 or something. Really love this. Alright, a little palette that surprised me a hell of a lot is this Smith & Colt palette. I've seen Smith & Colt and Ulta, but I've literally never heard anybody talk about them. And this is the Sombre Shift Matte and Metallic Eyeshadow Palette in Lilac Flash. Full disclosure, I found this at like TJ Maxx. Same, you know, that's a lot of my makeup. I found it at TJ Maxx for like $15 or something. And I looked at the color story and I was like, oh, fuck yeah, because it has... I mean, if you couldn't tell, I love me some pinks and some purples, and this pink and this purple are absolutely beautiful. It's also got these strange, like, rusty tones down here, and then these kind of boring neutral shades or whatever. And then this weird, that's why it's called the Sombre Shift palette, because it has this kind of, like, multi-chrome kind of topper shade, which I don't really think is that great. But let me tell you, this purple and the pink are... Of course, it doesn't look that great whenever I swatch it. No, that looks fine. But the purple and the pink, I think, are freaking beautiful together. And also, something that I love about this palette is that it just, for the way I do eyeshadow, which I usually pack things on and then blend out the edges, this palette just behaves. Everything works the way I want it to. Everything blends out the way I want it to. Like, I've used it for... I did one kind of pink and purple look, and I think I used some of the shifter on top of it. And then later on, I did kind of like a brick look with it. And I think I used these 3 shades. I'll try to insert some pictures if I can find them. And it just behaved both times. It just works. It just works. It behaves exactly the way I want it to. And for that, I commend Smith & Colt for this palette. It's a banger. Another palette that I unexpectedly loved, which you also can't get anymore, is the Colored Rain Power Palette. This is Colored Rain, which is a Black-owned brand, and this is their collaboration with the Stars show Power, I believe. I bought this on sale whenever it was being discontinued. If you couldn't tell, I buy basically all of my makeup on sale. I rarely pay full price for any of my makeup. And this palette really surprised me. This burgundy shade called Snitch is so freaking beautiful. It's like kind of creamy when you dip into it. And are you ready for this? Come on, camera, focus. It's so beautiful. I think I've done a near 1 shadow look with this, and it's just fucking stunning. Look at that shade. Oh my god. I love that shade. This palette actually has a very similar one to that last one we looked at, the Smith & Colt, and it's got this kind of topper shade, which I can kind of take or leave. It's chunky and it's annoying. This shade on top, Truth, this purple, is also absolutely stunning. Are we going to focus? Are we going to focus? Oh my fucking god, look at that shade. That shade is absolutely beautiful. These 2 shades together are everything. They're worth the entire price of the palette alone. God, yeah, this palette really surprised me. Like, I had heard good things about the Colored Rain, like, Queen of Hearts palette. I had never tried Colored Rain on my own before, and this palette is the fucking bomb. This might be my favorite palette that I bought in 2020, to be completely frank. I just love these 2 shades. This bottom row is nice, because these 3 over here are allowed to be a little bit softer. This is like a deeper kind of metallic color. This is like a duochrome. Oh my god, it's just freaking beautiful. And look at those colors. Like, how can you argue with that? This palette is fucking phenomenal. Colored Rain has their shit together. This was a good collaboration, and I love it. And speaking of Black-owned brands, let's start with, or we're going to end with Juvia's Place. I went on a huge kick of buying Juvia's Place palettes last year. As you can tell, I have several. And let's talk about them, I think in the order that I bought them. I'm pretty sure the Zulu was the first one I bought. I basically love all these palettes. Like, I'm not going to sit here and swatch everything because they're huge, but I really like the two bottom rows in this palette. I'm not crazy about the kind of sunflowery shades on the top, but I just really like what's going on in this palette. This rose gold color is really pretty. As you can see, I accidentally like dug a nail in it and took a chunk out of that because I'm a big idiot. But it's got this nice kind of gold reflect. It's just really, really pretty. The Warrior 3, also like the cover art. Can we just like take a second here? It's so beautiful. I love this palette because I love these kind of icy blues on the bottom. I'm kind of a sucker for like an ice blue color, which is why I like the ColourPop Blue Moon palette so much. I love this deep grape purple in it, this kind of slightly pastel pink. I just think these colors are pretty much to die for. I love these. And the Festival palette is also very beautiful. I love this deep turquoise. I love Izafa, if I'm saying that correctly. This is like a nice, like pretty true red, and like, you know how hard it is to find like true red eyeshadows, but that's like legit, like you want a red eyeshadow, and that's the ticket. Also, this bottom shade Kaliki is the most beautiful, oh my god, metallic black, look at that fucking shadow. That is so beautiful. I did a one shadow look with this a long time ago, and if I can find a picture I'll put it in. This is like this and my Becca black metallic shadow, like if these had to fight to the death, I think Kaliki would win. The other one will put up a pretty good fight, but man, that metallic black shadow is so good. Oh my god, I love it. And then we're going to end on these little bad boys. I've got the Berries and the Violets by Julia by Juvia's Place. Let's start with the Violets. I'm not in love with this palette as much because I feel like, I mean, obviously it's a monochromatic palette, but even with a monochromatic palette, I feel like it's a little bit too one note. Like, I feel like these two colors are a little bit too similar. These colors are a little bit too similar, and I don't like that there's only two mattes in here. I think it just could have been done a little bit better. But that being said, if you like purple eyeshadow, then be my guest, because this palette is pretty good. Like, even though I'm complaining about Juvia's Place palettes, they're all still good. Like, they don't have a freaking dud in them. But the Berries palette is, oh my god, I love this palette so much. I like this one because it has more mattes. Like, these three are mattes. This is kind of like a hot pink shot with glitter. You might be able to see it in there. I don't know how well my camera's focusing. And then you have these two metallic shades. These metallic shades are a little bit close to each other. Like, one is kind of a little bit pinker, and then one is a little bit coppery and more rusty. But if you are just looking for like a killer berry palette, then honestly look no further, because this crosses all the T's and dots all the I's. I really, really like this palette. Alright, well, we're all done now that my hand looks like a bunch of eyeshadows vomited on it, because that's pretty much exactly what happened, and my fingers are gross. Thank you for joining me for this video. Thank you for going on this eyeshadow palette deep dive with me. Like I said, I figured it'd be a good idea to actually show what I do own instead of what I don't own, because my last two videos have been me throwing away stuff that I don't own anymore. When I watch this video back, I already hate myself for how long it is, and probably for how stupid I sound for the entire video, because I think I talk at 1,000,000 miles an hour whenever I record YouTube videos. Because let me tell you, if you're an avid YouTube watcher, and you think when somebody makes a mistake on YouTube, and you're like, oh, well, it's just sitting down and talking in front of a camera, it's actually not that easy. There's something weird about turning on a camera and knowing what you're going to say is going to be, like, put out into the world, even though I have, like, 2.5 subscribers. That just makes you act different sometimes, and I think that's just, you know, I'm still pretty new to this and I don't record all the time, so maybe later on, whenever I get more seasoned, if I continue to upload, it'll be better. But right now, I feel like I just talk 100 miles an hour. But anyway, this video is long enough. I don't need to ramble on, so thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed my palettes. If I'm feeling really savvy with editing, I'll put some pictures in of some of the stuff that some of the demos for the palettes that I wore, like the pictures for my finished looks, because I'm much more of a editorial photographer for looks rather than like a video YouTuber person. I'm so dumb, oh my god. Anyway, thanks for watching, and maybe I'll be back in a week, maybe I'll be back in a month, maybe I'll be back in 6 months, but whatever, I'll be back at some point. I'm gonna put my Instagram link down below, because I put a lot of stuff on my Instagram for like makeup looks. I've got a makeup highlights tag on my front page of my Instagram. I'm primarily an action and portrait photographer, but I do post some of my makeup stuff on my Instagram. So if you want to see more of my stuff there, that's probably a good place to find me. But until the next one, thank you for watching. I appreciate it, and I will see you next time. Bye.